Now, your thesis meaning your filmmaking thesis?
It's my first feature-length documentary. I've done a short before this, and I used that short to sort of, go around the festival circuit and as I was starting to work on the other project. But both this film and this film started as my graduate thesis film project. When I finished my thesis version, slowly asked one by one for interviews. Then at the interview I would say, well, can I get a little extra observational of you to contextualize the interview? And those first initial interviews that I did with several board members and even many more science experts were sort of casting for me because I was showing it to other students and we were sort of figuring out who could be potential characters beyond the information that they provided. And just every time I showed dailies and rough cuts in class, and fellow students would say, well, I was kind of dozing off for much of the boardroom stuff, but when Don comes on the screen, I just light up and I want to know what he's going to say next. So he's a character for film, and it did so many interviews that were not used, and so it's always this back and forth of planning and writing your script and shooting and finding what you have, observing, watching the dailies in the film, and that reinforming what you can write, and it just a back and forth process. And the editing of this took, the editor was probably working about 3 to 4 months over the course of a year. And that allowed us to send it to people to get feedback, fresh feedback. Had a lot of eyes watching this, and we got a professional editor. And it sort of, I tell people it evolved. But
on the festival.
So what we did is it premiered at Tribeca Film Festival.
Oh, wow.
And from there, we've just, gotten a lot more attention than we normally would have.
So it's been, I tell people working with many documentary filmmakers, a 10-year documentary is actually a very short period of time.
Yeah, I'm learning, yeah.
I noticed that the credits you had the IFP support.
Oh, the IFP in New York.
Just, I guess basically like how much of a part do they play in supporting the production, and then like how did, I know you applied for it, I suspect.
Yeah.
How did you get involved? Did your short have something to do with
No.
leverage?
We're about 90%, 80% finished with the film. We had a really fine cut, and we submitted to be a part of IFP. If you guys don't know what that is, it's in New York, Independent Film Week production.
It actually stands for Independent Feature Project.
Feature Project,
and
okay.
They actually 600 or so submissions for like 60 films, and so I'm sure you're one of those, right?
Yeah, and it gets you a seat with, if it's 10 minutes or 15 minutes, with distributors, potential producing partners, broadcasters. It's sort of a one-stop shop for these people, and you have your trailer, you submit it to their catalog. These distributors and everybody look through this catalog, and then they pick who they want to meet with, and you get your list back. You're like, okay, who wants to meet with me?
Right, exactly. So
and we met with the people at Sundance, and we didn't get invited, so it's not like a guaranteed, HBO wants to talk with us, we're going to get a deal with them. In fact, it's very rare. But what it specifically did for us was put us in contact with 2 more producing partners that came in as executive producer, and also with the knowledge to sort of start our distribution deal later on. So they gave us a lot of money. We got about $35,000, and we ended up working with them, as producers as well. So that was we met some other producing partners. That was what came out of that for us.
It's once a year, and I try to tell filmmakers, documentary filmmakers, it's the greatest opportunity you can have if you get in.
As soon as we got the distribution deal with them, we also started talking with PBS, Independent Lens, who were interested in the film, and did a deal with them and had to cut our 83 minutes down to 53 minutes for television. And we got that deal.
Well, see, and Michael Moore, there's a moment in time when Michael Moore started to drive the documentary world. And the reason he did is because he used this way of like entertaining all of a sudden, and a lot of the older documentarians God, you don't even want to talk to them about him.
My professor despised.
You know, there is this huge divide. I mean, because I was at Sundance the year that Michael Moore came, and it kind of crossed over, you know, and it became. And before then, documentaries were kind of looked at as that boring, you know,
Right.
Kind of science.
So yeah, we want to make them entertaining,
Yeah,
but we don't
yeah.
want to disregard the facts, you know, and it's a balance there.
Balance constantly, I think, and I think it was even before then, but people don't want to admit it.
So that was like the next carrot on the stick. Okay, so now it's about politics and education. And then from there, we started looking at the characters in terms of story arc. And it was Don losing the election that for us was a good thing to work towards in the movie. It's because everybody knows it's like, you realize about halfway through after he gets demoted from chair, it's like, okay, now he's up for his seat on the chair. And that's something in the back of people's mind is sort of a closure. You know, it just feels more like a dramatic, it's a win or lose. Anytime you can find a competition aspect of your film, it's a good conflict, you know. Yeah, it gives you a story where there's tension, and there's a winner or a loser, you know. And I told Don, whether you win or lose, you know, you got to allow me, and he held true, you know, and let me film even though he was losing. So, but that night it was kind of like, okay, go now.
Do you think you're longer? Or I wonder if you'd like the longer or shorter version.
I actually, in terms of the shorter version on PBS, I actually like the shorter version better. It takes all of the necessary stuff, and it also gave me the time to show the feature length at these festivals. I could hear the feedback, and just after showing it so many times, I knew what we needed to cut, what needed to stay in.
Wow.
And we chopped through that pretty quickly, and I really do. I think the 53-minute version of this film is nice and succinct and just to the point, and just does a lot better job, a lot more effective.